Hello everyone, welcome to the webinar on how to simplify 700 level algebra questions. Before start, let's get started. So what I'm going to do now, guys, is I'm going to start sharing my presentation. It may take some time for you to reflect it at your end. Please let me know when you can see it. Okay. Can you please mark yes if you can see my presentation? If you can see my presentation, please mark yes in the yes and no poll. Great, I can see that you all can see my presentation. That's great. So let me get started. Once again, welcome to the webinar. My name is Saqib and I'm going to be the main host today. I'm a subject matter lead at GMAT Wiz, and I've been helping students ace MBA entrance exam for about 10 years now. Along with me, we have Piyush. Piyush is going to be our co-host, and he has been around. He has about 8 years of experience in mentoring students and preparing for entrance test exams. Now, as far as the progression of the session is concerned, we'll start off by very briefly talking about who we are, and this is especially for students who are attending our webinar for the very first time. Then we are going to go into the main presentation where we are going to discuss how to ace algebra. And finally, we'll have 15 to 20 minutes where you can ask any questions that you want to ask related to anything. It could be about algebra, it could be about general preparation, about quant, anything you can ask. Okay, so let me very quickly start about talking about who we are. So we are a group of very dedicated people who have been working at GMAT Wiz and trying to figure out what are the pain points of students and trying to help them in the best way possible. And in our experience, what we have realized is that there are three main pain points for any students. The first pain point that I've realized is that while preparing for the exam, most of you have to plan your studies yourself, right? I've seen a lot of time people asking on general forums that how should I prepare for my exam? What is the best way to I need a 3-month plan. What's the best way to do it? And so on and so forth. Another pain point is obviously analyzing your strength and weakness. A lot of you, while preparing for your exam, do take a lot of tests, right? But you don't know how to analyze if you get a 70%, is it good or bad? Even if you're not doing well, what should you do to improve? Those things are a big pain point for most of the students, and obviously there's no individual attention. You don't know how to plan properly, and there's no one to help you out actually to analyze your strengths and weaknesses. So obviously, if you don't know how to plan, what most test prep companies do is they give you a very static plan, a 1 month or a 3 month or a 6 month plan. And I see this in a lot of forums. People just say, give me a 3 month plan. But these plans are not personalized, right? They're not adapting according to you, according to your strengths and weaknesses. What if I provide you with a 3 month plan and you may be able to prepare in say 2 months only? Or what if there are certain things that you have already done in the plan? How are you going to adapt to that? So these static plans don't actually help you much. Apart from that, obviously, the stats that are provided by most of the test prep companies, they are not really insightful as such. You don't know what to do with those stats. You may be able to figure out that you're good at these things and maybe not good at some things, but what next? What should I do? What should you do with those statistics, right? And finally, even if you say decide to take a private tutoring, it's not affordable for everybody, right? It's not really easy that you take a private tutoring sessions because they're very expensive. So all in all, because of these three main reasons, a lot of students end up not doing so well in the exam. And keeping these things in point in mind, we decided to start off GMAT Wiz, where our only mission is to make sure to revolutionize the way students learn. And in the most efficient, in the most effective manner, and most importantly, in the most personalized way possible. So what we try to do is to make sure that the study plan that we provide is adapts as you learn. We make sure that the analytics that you're provided with, they are actionable. Whatever you're doing, if you're not doing well at anything, we make sure that you provide you with relevant material at that very moment so that you can fix it. And obviously, since the course is personalized, the need for taking a private tutoring and all those things is nullified. Okay, now let's come to the second part of the presentation where I'm going to talk about what should you do and how can you ace the algebra section really well. Okay, now here's a question for you. Uh, if you want to ace algebra, right? If you want to do well in algebra, what do you think what are the different topics that you think you need to do well in to ace algebra? Okay, linear quadratic equations. Okay, Radhakrishnan, you're correct. So the obvious things that you need to be really good at is, say, linear and simultaneous equations, quadratic equations, exponents. Then there's inequalities at both absolute and linear, and quadratic inequalities. Then your functions and sequences. So this is the very obvious thing that you really need to be good at to ace algebra, right? And this is what most test prep companies also tell you to do, that hey, learn, make sure that you do these concepts clearly, and that should be enough. But I slightly beg to differ here. I agree that these concepts are really needed to do well in algebra. But apart from that, what I feel is that there are certain other skills that are actually very, very important if you want to ace algebra. And these skills are obviously required in other modules also, be it number properties, word problem. And the skills that I'm talking about here is known as the simplification skill or inference skill. And let me forming equations from data in the equations. And yeah, that's absolutely correct, Mahiti. So what I'm trying to say here is that let's say you're given an equation like this, right? In algebra, you come across equations like 2 to the power x is equal to 2 to the power y. And from there, you are able to infer that, hey, x is equal to y, right? And this is the skill that you will learn if your concepts are in place. But you may come across equations like these also, like 0.5 to the power x is 2 to the power y. Now, if you just know the concept that 2 to the power x, if 2 to the power x is equal to 2 to the power y, then x equal to y, and that is the only thing that you know, then maybe, just maybe, you may not be able to solve 0.5 to the power x equal to 2 to the power y. Okay. And a lot of you, I'm very sure, do get stumped by looking at this expression and may have to think twice what to do and what not to do. Similarly, what might happen is that you may come across a formula like this, right? It's a standard formula, a square minus b square is a plus b times a minus b, right? And all of you know this formula. But how many of you, when you come across an equation like this, say x cube minus x, how many of you do actually realize that this is just another way of writing it in it's basically an application of the formula that is given up. And that's very important for you to be able to do that. So if you're not able to simplify and infer what this can be written as, you may not be able to do well in the exam. So the skill that's very important, that you must have the skill to be able to simplify these expressions. And after simplification, you should be able to make the right inferences. So uh, in case of the first one, that is 0.5 to the power x is equal to 2 to the power y, you should be able to infer that x plus y is equal to 0. That's one of them. Again, I'm not going into details now. There's some application of this in the question that I'm going to discuss, but that is the kind of inference that you should be able to draw out. Similarly, when you see an equation like, say, x cube minus x, you should be able to simplify it and write it as x minus 1 times x plus 1. Okay, and it's also very important that you are able to infer that these are three consecutive integers. So it's not just important to simplify it. After simplification, it's also important they're able to make the right inferences. Okay. Now, there are also some other common mistakes which I talk about a lot, and I feel that you should be able to avoid in general also. It's not only about algebra, but you should be able to avoid mistakes like not doing the right analysis. And when I say avoid incomplete or no analysis, I'm talking about a scenario like this. You've done your calculation, you wrote it as x minus 1, x plus 1, but if you leave it at that place and don't do proper analysis and come to the inference that there are three consecutive integers, you may not be able to get the right answer. Okay. Sometimes also some common mistakes are not reading properly. A lot of you sometimes in a hurry don't read the question properly or do not actually figure out what they are asking and mark the wrong answer. DS trap is a very common problem. GMAT sets a lot of C traps, D traps, and you should be aware of those kind of traps to be able to do well. And obviously, it's very important to not make calculation mistakes. And even if you're taking numbers to solve the question, which I think is very popular among you students, then if you're taking numbers to solve the question, it's very important that you do not miss out on any cases. So, so what I'm trying to tell here is that it is important that you learn the concepts well. Okay, that's the first thing that you need to do. But apart from that, you need to make sure that you gain these skills of simplifying, you gain the skills of inferring it in the right way, and at the same time, avoid these mistakes. Okay, and this is just a brief view of the course that we provide at our in our portal at GMAT. So what we do is if you go through our video lesson, you can obviously take a free trial, and what you'll notice is that we have created the course in that manner, only the way we are actually advocating at this point of time. What we really want you to do is, first of all, if you look at the course, you'll see that it's divided into three levels. Level one, that is Quant Foundation, Quant Intermediate, Quant Advanced. If you go through the lessons, you'll be able to see that we start off with the basics. We tell you to first of all solidify your learnings of fractions, decimals, estimation, rounding, understanding the numbers classification, and then we tell you to focus on just the basics of algebra. So like linear equations, quadratic equations, and exponents, because these are things which are used almost everywhere. Okay, and if you go through any video lesson, what you'll notice, any topic, linear equations or quadratic equations, any topic at all, you'll see that we teach you not only the concepts, but we also teach you to how to solve the questions in the right manner. And the course is very progressive in nature. So you learn about the different kind of numbers, you learn how to solve different kind of equations, how to deal with powers, and then only we take you to some certain basic things which are used across all questions. Like for example, unitary method, ratio proportion, percentages. These are things that you apply not only in one particular module. You'll see these applications of these in almost every other question. So these are not specific to only one topic. And you need to also understand why we are doing this. See, think if you're learning exponents, then that exponent will help you solve questions when you're doing prime numbers, because in prime numbers you need to do prime factorization, right? If you're not comfortable with exponents, then when you go to prime factors, when you're doing prime factorization, when you're dealing with powers, there's high chance that you might make a mistake. So all in all, what I'm trying to say here is that the learning should be progressive in nature, which most test prep industries don't do. They tell you to complete first algebra, everything in algebra, then everything in number properties, and that's not the right way to learn. That way, while learning, say, number properties, you might not know a lot of algebra concepts, and because of that, you may get the question wrong. And you might start wondering, hey, why did I get the question wrong? I know the concept, but the problem basically lies is because you do not know something that you haven't studied yet, and the application is in that question. So it's important to study in a very progressive manner. Okay. So what I'm going to do in this webinar is I'm going to take 6 questions. Okay. And through the 6 questions, I'm going to tell you how you can avoid these kind of mistakes that I've talked about, mistakes of falling in the common traps, not reading properly, and also algebra specific mistakes that you make. Like, so basically think of this session as all about simplification inference, how not making the right inference or not doing the simplification properly will lead you to make a mistake in the question. I'm also going to focus a bit on visualization of number line, because when you're dealing with questions of exponents, you'll come across number lines, and if you don't draw it, you'll not be able to solve the question properly. Okay, and I'll be touching upon some concepts also, so don't worry if you don't know any question properly. I'll discuss briefly each and every concept wherever I think it's important, and at the same time highlight the common mistakes. And believe me, understanding these mistakes properly and making sure that you do not repeat them again is actually the main difference that can help you go from say 49 to 51 or 45 to 48. These small things do actually create a big impact. Okay, with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you how this webinar is going to go. I'm going to show you a question and I'll give you about 2.5 minutes to solve the question. Okay, and I'll give a poll, open a poll for you. You need to mark your answer in that poll. Once I feel I have sufficient responses or 2.5 minutes is over, then I'll stop the poll and then I'll discuss the concepts and the best way to solve that question. Okay. So I hope you're all excited, and here's the first question on the screen. I'm sure all of you can see it, and let me bring up the poll. Just a request, do not put your answer in the chat pod. Everyone is trying to solve the question, and I think it's best not to put your answer in the chat and bias the answer. So I've opened the poll. I've published it also. You should be able to see it at your end. Once you're done solving the question, mark your answer in the poll. And then after 2.5 minutes, I'll start the discussion. You can type it in the chat pod. Anyone? Okay, Mahiti is saying that I took a sample -1/2. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, Mahiti, you're kind of correct. You can take a sample to solve this question. So let me very quickly discuss what's the best way to go about it. Now, see, in this question, it's given that x lies between 0 and -1, and we need to find out which of the following options is always true. And this is very important that to note that this is a must be true kind of question. And whenever you see those who have attended my previous webinar, I told them that if you see a must be true kind of question, then we can solve this question by just taking values and finding the answer. Okay, so it's perfectly okay to take a sample and solve this question. Now, what I want to talk about here, the reason for behind giving this question is to tell you that okay, Ananya is saying choose between A and E. Okay, fine. Now, what happens is that in the typical GMAT question, in this kind of question, the reason behind giving this is because you'll mostly be tested on 4 regions on the number line. Okay, as I've drawn the number line, notice that I've marked 3 points here, -1, 0, and 1. These are 3 very important points which people fail to take into account while solving a question on inequalities or algebra. And you'll notice that when I draw these 3 points, I get 4 different regions. One of the regions is x is less than 1, -1. The other is between 0 and -1. The third is 0 and 1. And the last region is x is greater than 1. Okay, and usually on the GMAT, you'll be tested on these 4 regions and these 3 points. So if the region is not mentioned and you want to find out what must be true, it always makes sense to draw the diagram with these 3 points and then figure out using the regions. Now, let's to make this point more clear, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take a very simple question here. Okay. The reason why I'm taking this is because the very interesting thing about these regions is that they follow a very universal pattern. Okay, and why this makes it interesting is because you don't need to remember anything. You don't need to remember which power works when. You just need to remember there are 4 regions and 3 points, and you can just take a sample value and then check it and check which one works. So for example, if it's given which is greater, x cube or x to the power 5, and if I tell you I want to figure out which one is greater in this region, say x is less than -1, okay, in the first region that's in the corner, I want to figure out which power is greater, then all I need to do is just take a sample value. So I can take x is equal to -2, which is a very convenient value. Then I'll find x cube and x to the power 5. I'll see I'm getting -8 and -32. And if I draw on the number line, I know that -8 is closer to 0, right? It comes before. So that means -8 is greater than -32. And once I see -8 is greater than -32, I can say that x cube is greater than x to the power 5. So important learning and takeaway is you don't need to worry about getting two different answers in any region. In one particular region, the answer is always going to remain the same. And once you find out a pattern, you can extend it also. You don't need to check for other powers. So if x cube is greater than x to the power 5, then that means x to the power 5 will be greater than x to the power 7, x to the power 7 will be greater than x to the power 9, and so on for this particular region. Okay. Uh, I'm just taking one other example very quickly. So for example, if I want to find out in the next region, say -1 to 0, here also you can do the same thing. Take x equal to -half. Okay. If I take x equal to -half, then -half whole cube is -1/8, and half to the power 5 is -1/32. And if you look at the number line, you'll be able to see that -1/32 is closer to 0. That means -1/32 will be greater than -1/8, or in other words, you can say that x -1/8 is less than x to the power 5. Okay, and again, you can extend this learning and say x cube is less than x to the power 5, which is less than x to the power 7, and so on. And this is what we are going to use to solve the question. We took this region, we took the sample value x is equal to -half, and we saw that this is the pattern, right? And we can find out the same for the other four regions also. So in region 3, x cube is greater than x to the power 5 is greater than x to the power 7, and so on. And for region 4, it's just the opposite. So all in all, the learning here is take values, solve the question for that region, don't need to check for any other values, and you can extend the learning. So this question, I knew that we saw in region 2 what was happening. X cube is less than x to the power 5. So we'll take that learning here. Okay. But in this case, we are looking for the inverse, right? Inverse relationship is being asked. So we can inverse it very easily. Just inverse it, and what will happen is the sign will change. Why will the sign change? Can anyone tell me? If I inverse it, why does the sign change? Anyone? So if I inverse it, I'll get this. 1 by x cube is greater than 1 by x to the power 5 is greater than x to the power 7. So see, the sign has changed from less than to greater than. Why is this happening? You can type in your response in the chat. Again, this is a very important learning. The sign does not always change. I just want to understand why are we changing the sign here. No one? Okay, so we are changing the sign here because it's a negative value. These values are negative. X cube, x to the power 5, x to the power 7, x to the power 9, they are all negative values. So it makes sense that if you're inversing it, then we need to change the sign. And once we know that x cube is greater than x to the 1 by x cube is greater than 1 by x to the power 5, so we are noticing that the lower powers have a higher value. And that using that knowledge, if you want to find out a relation between them, we can say that the lower value will be greater than the lower power value will be greater. So from there, you will be able to infer that 1 by x to the power 9 is greater than 1 by x to the power 15, and so on and so forth. And thus the answer in this case will be option E. Okay, so the main takeaway from this question is that when you're dealing with questions based on number line, always make sure to draw the four regions and the 3 points. And if you're asked a question for specifically ask for a particular region, like in this case, we need to find it for -1 to 0, right? Then you should simply take a value and check the answer. You'll always get the answer. Thankfully, almost every one of you marked the answer as E. So obviously your conceptual knowledge and inference, because here we were inferring, right? That if we inverse it, if we take from x cube to 1 by x cube, the relation changes. So if you're able to do both, then your conceptual knowledge and your inference skills are both in place. If you would have marked anything else, there's a high chance that you're lacking in both your conceptual skill and inferential skill. So good for those of you who marked the answer as E. Now, let's look at the next question. Here's the next one. Once again, let me reset the poll for you. Here's the poll, guys. Okay, another 10 seconds, then I'm going to end the poll. Once again, guys, I'll encourage you to please mark the answer. If you're not marking it, then the purpose of the session is defeated. So please do participate and mark your answer. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. Okay. So let's discuss this question very quickly. In this question, it's given that we need to find out whether 0.25 to the power x is greater than 4 to the power x or not. Okay. Now tell me, how many of you actually took some numbers and started checking when is 0.25 to the power x greater than 4 to the power x? How many of you? I'm bringing a yes/no poll. Please mark yes if you did that. If you started taking numbers and checking when is this possible. If you did that, please mark yes. If you did not do it, please mark no. Okay. Okay. So I can see that you did not take numbers to solve the question, which is very good. Now, did any of you actually try to simplify the expression? Please, once again, bring up the poll. Please mark yes if you try to simplify the expression. When I say simplify, you simplified it before moving to these statements. Before moving to these statements, you simplified it and then moved on to these statements. If you did not, you can please mark no, that's totally okay. Okay, I can see it's a 50-50 split here. Okay, fine. So some of you did it, some of you did not. That's totally okay. Now, this is one of those questions where the simplification skill, as I was talking about, is very important. Having a very sound simplification skill. Now, what you need to do is whenever you see an expression like this, try and see if there's any way to make the expressions much more simple or easy to understand. Because now it seems like 0.25 and 4, they are not related in any way to each other. However, they are. Now, if you look closely, you'll see that this 0.25 is can be written as 1 by 4 to the power x, and that's very important. So 0.25 is 25 by 100, and if you cancel out the 25, you'll get 1 by 4. Now, those of you who are able to do this will find the question slightly easy to solve. Because now the expression that I have with me can be simplified and written like this. Okay. Now, what you can do is you can multiply both sides by 4 to the power x. On doing so, you'll notice that on the left-hand side, 4 to the power x, 4 to the power x will get cancelled out, and you'll be left with 1 is greater than 4 to the power 2x. So see, I'm first simplifying the expression, trying to make some sense of it, and then I'll move on to the statement. Even here, I won't stop at this point. Now, I know that to equate the powers, to make some sense of the powers, the bases should be the same. So 1 can be written as 4 to the power 0. Right? Now the bases are also the same. So now I can take the powers into consideration and say 4 to the power 0 is greater than 4 to the power 2x, and that means 0 should be greater than 2x, or in other words, x is less than 0. So you can see if you jump directly to the statement, you will have to figure out, take values and check it. But if you do this kind of simplification, this was a medium kind of a question. This wasn't a very hard question. Okay, it's about a 650 level question. But in more difficult questions which are going to come, you need to have this kind of skill to be able to make such inferences. If you don't make such inferences, you will not be able to solve the question. So now the question which was, just one sec, guys. Okay, really sorry guys for the interruption. So what I was saying is that you need to make this simplification. Once you do the simplification, the calculation becomes really easy. So now you know what you're looking for. Okay. So we need to find out x is less than 0. That's all. So the question gets translated into this. And now it's very easy to look at the statement. The first statement is x squared is equal to 64. And we can bring 64 to the other side, write it in this form, and say that x could be 8 or minus 8. Now, just looking at this, we can see that we're getting two different values. And this is enough for us to discard the statement. However, if you want, you can do further analysis. Those of you who did not do the pre-analysis might have to check all these stuff, take x equal to 8, x equal to minus 8 and do it, which is not required as such. So you'll be wasting time. Those of you who figured out x is less than 0 could look at these two values and say, I'm getting greater than 0, less than 0, so I will not get my answer. So statement 1 is not sufficient, and hence your answer cannot be A or D. If you look at the second statement, x cube is less than 0. In this case, x cube is less than 0 only when x is negative, right? If it's negative, then only you get a less than 0 value. So if x cube is negative, then that automatically means that x has to be negative. So see, this statement is directly telling us that x is less than 0. And from this statement, we can definitely answer that and say that 0.25x is greater than 4 to the power x. And hence the answer in this case will be option B. So I hope you have appreciated the process of simplification. Those of you who do not do this simplification may end up marking the answer as C. What you may end up doing is you'll see that in statement 1, you're getting 8 and minus 8. From statement 2, you'll see that you're getting less than 0. And then you may combine both of them to say that x is equal to minus 8. Those of you, and this is a mistake people make if they don't do any pre-analysis. Okay, there may be a very few of you who may end up marking the answer as E, but for those people, you could not infer that even x cube is less than 0 means x is negative. That means your conceptual knowledge is not at all in place. Okay, so if you're marking, those of you who end up marking the answer A, your simplification, inference, conceptual skill, they're all lacking a lot. Those who are marking B have done almost everything correctly. I'm saying maybe in simplification because those of you do hit and trial may not be using simplification and still get the answer. But if you did simplify, then that's really good for you. And obviously those who are marking C, D, and E, they lack most of the processes. They don't know how to simplify. They don't know how the concept well also. And this is the kind of error log, basically. The reason I'm showing you this is because this is the kind of error log you should maintain for yourself, trying to figure out where are you going wrong and then fixing it. Now, if you're not using our course, then you'll have to do this manually. Those who are students who basically this is automatically plotted for you, and the data for all these are automatically measured at our end. We do keep a track of all these things automatically for you all. Okay. If you're able to figure out where you're making a mistake, it's easy for you to fix it. So those of you who are not our students, you should try and maintain this. Okay, here's the third question, and this is a very good question, a lot of learning in this question. Try it out and let me bring up the poll. Again, I'll give you 2.5 minutes to solve the question. Another 15 seconds, guys, then I'll end the poll. Once again, I'll encourage all of you to mark the answer. Please do so. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. So if there's anyone else who wants to mark the answer, please do it. Okay. So I have a very interesting result here, and this was slightly difficult, so I can understand the confusion. So 33% of you think that the answer should be B, 33% of you think the answer should be C, and I have a few E's also. And this was expected. I had an inkling that some of you might get confused with this question. It's slightly difficult. Now, The reason behind giving this question is that, as I told you, there's a lot of learning out here, and I wanted to touch upon a bit of quadratic inequalities. Obviously, it's not possible for me to teach the whole concept, but I would like you to at least learn a few ranges or some typical scenarios which you may come across a lot. And these are the scenarios that I'm talking about. You may come across expressions like x minus a, x minus b is less than 0, or x minus b greater than 0, or something like this. X minus a, b, c is greater than 0, right? So how do you very quickly find out the range of these kind of quadratic inequalities? So I wanted to very briefly discuss this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one case each, okay? And I'm going to tell you what you can do to very quickly find out the range. Obviously, there's a theory behind it, but I'm not going into the theory at this point of time. Now, look at the first case. You come across a situation like this, which is x minus 2 times x plus 3 is greater than 0. Now, what does this question mean? Well, this question simply means that we are looking for values of x, okay, which when we put it in this expression should give me greater than 0. Okay, so for example, if I take x equal to 4, and if I put it in the expression, I will get greater than 0, right? So I need to look for these kind of values or the range of x which will provide me such values. Okay, now to solve this question, the process is very simple. All you need to do is find out the reference point first. So what do I mean by the reference point? You just take x minus 2 and equate it to 0. You take x plus 3 and equate it to 0 and find out the points that you're getting. So in this case, you're getting 2 points, x equal to 2 and x equal to minus 3, right? And you draw that on a number line. Okay, you draw it like this, minus 3 and 2. And after drawing this number line, what you do is you mark the extreme right, this point, as positive. Okay, and after marking this point as positive, you start alternating the signs. So after positive, then make negative, then alternate the sign again, then you'll get positive. Okay, now in this case, what are we looking for? We are looking for values which are greater than 0. That means positive values. So you'll say the range of x would be x is greater than 2 and x is less than minus 3. Is this clear, guys? Kindly mark yes if this is perfectly clear. Let me bring up the poll very quickly. Those of you who know this, well and good. Those of you who do not, please just mark yes if this is clear. What you're doing is marking the 0 points. I'm repeating it, the process very easily. Mark the 0 points. Okay, then mark the extreme right as positive and keep alternating signs. So positive, negative, positive. If it is greater than 0, then you're looking for the positive part. So you'll say x is greater than 2 and x is less than minus 3. Okay, so I can see yes everywhere, so which is good. So let me take the next case. You may come across a scenario like this also, which is less than 0. Here also nothing changes. You just find out the reference point first. So x minus 7 equal to 0 will give you x equal to 7. That is the one reference point. And x minus 0.5 equal to 0 gives you x 0.5. So draw the reference point first. And once again, mark the positive as the extreme right. So the process, it doesn't matter whether you have a greater than sign or less than sign. The process of marking positive, negative, positive remains the same. So I'll keep on alternating the sign. Okay. Now in this case, look that we are looking for less than 0. Not greater than 0, which is important, right? So can anyone tell me, if you're looking for less than 0, what will be the answer? Will it be x greater than 7 and x less than 0.5? Or will the answer be between 0.5 to 7? You can write your answer in the chat box. What do you think will be the answer? If you've understood it correctly, you should be able to tell me. Again, keep in mind, we are looking for values that are less than 0. Anyone? Okay, Maiti is saying 0.5 to 7. Anyone else? And Maiti, you're correct. It's the only thing that you need to keep in mind, guys, is that if it's less than 0, that you need to take the part which is negative. In this case, the negative part is 0.5 to minus 0.5 to 0.5 to 7. So you'll say the answer would be 0.5 to 7. Okay. If you're looking for greater than 0, then you would have said x is greater than 7 and x is less than 0.5. So I hope this is correct. This is perfectly clear. Okay. Now let me take up the last case very quickly. See, keep this in mind that it's not necessary that there will be only two products. You could have three also. Like in this case, x minus 5, x plus 12, x minus 9 less than 0. Right? In this case also, please keep in mind nothing changes. You just equate them to 0. Each and every point, x minus 5, x plus 12, x minus 9. Find out the reference point. Draw them on the diagram like this. Okay. And then once again, start from the extreme right and mark positive, negative, positive, negative. Okay. Now, can anyone tell me, and let me open a poll very quickly. What will be the answer? If you have understood this clearly, you should be able to answer it. Just one sec, let me bring up the poll. Okay, here's the poll for you guys. What do you think will be the answer? Mark it in the poll. Will it be A or will it be B? Okay, I can see a few responses. Anyone else wants to mark the answer? Okay. Yes, in this case, you're correct. The answer, okay, I just got an incorrect answer. So I could see a 50-50 split here. Guys, those of you who marked the answer as A. See, once again, notice very carefully that we are looking for less than 0. When less than 0 means that we are looking for a range which is negative. Where is the negative sign? The negative sign is between 5 and 9. The negative sign is here, that is less than minus 12. So in this case, this would be your answer. Okay. X is less than minus 12 and 5 to 7. So it's important that the takeaway here is that you draw the reference point, you mark them on the number line, put the sign alternatively, and depending on whether you're asked for greater than 0 or less than 0, you define the range. That's all. Okay. So keeping this in mind, we'll see if we can use that learning in this question. Now here it's given that x is a non-zero number. Okay. Now if x is a non-zero number and we need to find out whether x minus 9 is greater than 0 or not, which means x is greater than 9 or not. So obviously no pre-analysis can be done here because nothing else is given. So we should directly jump into the statement. Now the first statement is where whatever we have learned so far can be used. It's given that x squared minus 6x minus 27 is greater than 0. Now the left hand side can actually be, you can do middle term factorization and write it in the form x minus 9 times x plus 3 is greater than 0. So it's very important to be able to do that. Those of you who are not able to do it means that you still need to work on your quadratic equations a bit and make sure that you improve on that. Okay. Now once we have this, the step becomes really simple. It's greater than 0. It's in the same form as shown. So you find out the reference point. Reference point is 9 and minus 3. You draw the reference point, put on the signs, and here you're looking for greater than 0. So that means x is greater than 9 and x is less than minus 3. That's your range. So looking at this and seeing that you need to find out x greater than 9, it's very easy to say, hey, I cannot get the answer from the statement. Why cannot get the answer? Because it could be less than minus 3 also. I'm getting two different answers here. And since I'm getting two different answers, I cannot say for sure whether x is greater than 9 or not. And hence statement 1 is not sufficient and the answer cannot be A or D. So you can see if you know the things that I taught you now, this statement is very easy to solve. It will hardly take you 30 seconds to infer that statement 1 is not sufficient. Okay. Now let's look at the second statement. Now the second statement here is slightly tricky. It's given that x squared plus x less than 9. Now, obviously, if it's a form of the quadratic equation, you'll have to check whether you can break it in the form as shown here, x minus a times x minus b is less than 0 or not. That is the first thing that you need to check. Okay. Now, obviously, I'm sure you must have noticed that if we try and break it, we won't be able to do it, right? It cannot be broken down into the form that we just discussed now. So when you are not able to break it down, that does not mean that you discard the statement. And I'm saying this for people especially who mark the answer as C or E. Just don't discard it. Try and think, what do we actually need to find out? Well, we need to find out whether x is greater than 9 or not. So just take x in this side and take the rest of the stuff the other side. So I can write the expression as x is less than 9 minus x squared. Now, after writing this, okay, you think a little bit, keeping in mind the question stem that x is a non-zero number and you need to find x is greater than 9. Think, can you find out the answer or not? Again, let me bring up the poll. Mark yes if you think you can find out the answer, and no if you think you cannot. Keep in mind you need to find out whether x is greater than 9, and you know that x is a non-zero number. Okay. Well, let me end the poll now. Okay, so I can see 67% of you are saying that no, we cannot get the answer. And guys, this is again, you might think that I'm rambling this and saying this again and again, but this is where you need to work on your skills that I was talking about. It clearly says that x is a non-zero number. Now, can anyone put in the chat box and tell me, what do I mean by a non-zero number? What's a non-zero number? What kind of a number is a non-zero number? Can anyone give me some examples of a non-zero number? Anyone? Once again, it's okay if you get it wrong. Just tell me any non-zero number, guy. Yes. Ananya says 1 minus 1. Yes. So basically, what I wanted to say here, that a non-zero number is a number which can be positive or it can be negative, right? It can be either of these values. Okay, it can be positive, negative, both. Now, important thing here you need to make an inference here is that if x is not 0, that means x could be plus 1, minus 1, or positive or negative. Whatever be it, x square will also be a non-zero number, and since it's a square, it will be positive, right? X square will be a positive number. Now you have an expression which says x is less than 9 minus x square, and focus on this 9 minus something positive. So I'm subtracting this positive value from 9. So if I'm subtracting this value from 9, obviously the final value that you get, 9 minus x square, 9 minus x square will be less than 9, right? For example, let's take a very quick example. If x is 1, okay, 1 square would be 1 and x would be less than 8, right? You can take 0.5, you can take minus 2, whatever you take. But the idea is if you subtract something from 9, the value that you will get will be less than 9, right? Which means we can say if x is less than 9 minus x square, then that definitely means that x is less than 9, right? Because its value cannot be 9 because I'm subtracting something from it. And if you're finding this a bit difficult to understand, then there's another way you can understand it. See, I was telling you, right, x squared is greater than 0, right? So what you can do is you can multiply both sides. You can first subtract and then multiply, whatever works both way. But you can subtract, say, 9 both sides. Okay, you'll get x squared minus 9 is greater than minus 9, right? And now you can multiply by minus 1 both sides. On doing so, you'll get 9 minus x squared is less than 9, right? I hope this part is perfectly clear, because if this is clear, you should be able to understand if x is less than 9 minus x square and 9 minus x square is less than 9, then that automatically means that x is less than 9. So if x is less than 9, we can very clearly answer the question. The question is a yes no kind of question. The question is asking, is x greater than 9? You will say no, x is not greater than 9, it is less than 9. And that is why the second statement is sufficient to answer the question, and the correct answer in this case is option B. I hope this is perfectly clear. This is a difficult question, and if you're not able to do well in this question, there are two main reasons for it. One is not being able to use the constraint that is given in the question properly. You could not understand the significance of x as a non-zero number. You could not use this to make the right inference here that x square is a non-zero value, and after subtracting it will be less than 9. Another possible reason for not doing well or not getting this correct is because you were focused on getting x is greater than 9. Since you were focused on getting x is greater than 9, you did not try and think of a possibility that it could be something else also. Okay, so the main takeaway here is that that you, first of all, obviously, is that you need to be able to solve the quadratic inequality, which I showed you in step 1. It's very important. If you're not able to do that, you will not be able to solve, obviously, the first statement also. Okay. Also, if you're not able to break down the statement, like in the case of the second statement, we could not break it down. So in that case, we should not just discard it and say, hey, if we cannot break it, that statement is useless. We should try and see if we can make any pertinent inference from it. And once again, this was obvious, as I told you, a C trap and an E trap. And I know you would fall for it. And you saw in the poll, some of you ended up marking this, because in GMAT also you're going to face similar situations. They know that if your concept is weak, if you're not making the right inferences, you'll fall for that trap. Once again, those who marked option A, unfortunately, none of the inference simplification conceptual skills are in place. Thankfully, no one marked A. Those of you who marked B, then that's really great. Some of you did, 33% of you did that, which is very good. If you're marking C the answer, then you're not doing any inference or simplification properly. You may know your concepts a little bit, but you're still lagging behind the main reason, as I told you, one additional reason because of which you may not be able to do an algebra, that is inference and simplification. And obviously, if you're marking D and E, unfortunately, none of it is in place. So if you're falling under this category, it makes sense to not just focus on the concept, but also focus on small things like inference, how to infer and how to simplify. Okay, well, let's move on to the next question, guys. Here's this one. And once again, loads of learning in this question too. I'll give you 2.5 minutes. Okay, guys, I'm going to end the poll in 10 seconds. So if there's anyone else who wants to mark the answer, please do it very quickly. Okay, ending the poll now. Okay, once again, an interesting result. And I have about 50% of you who think the answer should be C, and some of you who think the answer should be E. I won't tell the answer now. Let's discuss it and let's see which one of you are correct. Now, the purpose of giving you this question again is to teach you a bit of absolute inequalities. Okay, a number of times what will happen is you'll come across expressions like these: mod of x is less than a, mod of x is greater than a, and what happens is that a lot of you actually start taking values to solve the question. Okay, whenever you see such an expression. So how many of you fall under this category, that you see a modulus like this or similar modulus like this, and you start taking some random values to check what could be the range of x and y? If you fall under that category, please mark yes in the poll. When I say how many of you do so, what I mean by that is how many of you take values to solve these kind of questions. Just random values putting in and checking which one is correct. If you don't do it, that's fine. But if you do it, please mark yes. That's again no right, wrong and right answer. I just want to know how many of you do it. Okay. So I can see almost those of you have put in the response, you're saying that you do not do it. And if you do not do it, then that's great, guys, because you shouldn't do it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to very quickly just tell you how to find out these ranges if you come across situations like this. And since all of you said that you don't take values, I'm assuming that you know how to solve it. Okay. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here. So one particular case that you might come across is like something like this: mod of x is less than 3. Okay, so the idea is that you have a mod and you have a less than sign and some value. In this case, the answer is simply minus 3 to 3. Okay, so if you have a less than sign and if you're 3, then that means the value would lie between minus 3 to 3. If I have to generalize it, all I can say is that if you see mod of x is less than a, then you should remember that the range is from minus a to a. Again, there's a theoretical reason behind it. We have all this in our video lessons, but again, going through it is not possible at this point of time. So I'm just talking about the quick takeaways. Mod of x less than a between minus a to a would be your range. Okay, so this is something like this. Another scenario could be x is greater than 5. Mod of x is something greater than. So let's say 5. So in this case, the range is very simple. You'll say either x is greater than 5 and x is less than minus 5. Okay. So if I have to generalize it again, I can say if mod of x is greater than a, then that means x is greater than a and x is less than minus a. And this is what somewhat the diagram would look. Okay. X is greater than a, x is less than minus a. So if you don't know this, make sure to jot it down, remember this, so that your life becomes easy. You can do, if you know this thing, you can solve this particular question in under 30 to 45 seconds. Now, you may come across a situation like this, which we already have here in our both these statements. If you come across a statement like this, you might ask yourself, do you need to do something different here? Well, to simplify it, no, you don't need to. Okay, whatever is inside the bracket does not matter. You just see there's a mod, and if you see there's a less than sign, then that you can very clearly say that whatever is inside something is less than. If it's given, then that simply means minus a to a. Okay, here your something is 2x plus 3 is less than 4, so you'll say that your range is between minus 4 to 4, and you have 2x plus 3. So whatever is inside will be written like this, and it will be within the given range minus 4 to 4. After that, you need to simplify for x. So you need to subtract 3 both sides divided by 2, and that get the range, which is this. Okay, so you're not doing anything special. If you remember case 1 and case 2, that is only what you're going to apply everywhere. Okay, so keeping this in mind, let's very quickly solve the question. Here in the question stem, nothing is given to us. We're just told is x greater than y. We need to find out whether x is greater than y or not. So if you have nothing given, keep in mind, do not assume anything as such. X could be, don't think that x are integers. People tend to make this mistake. Don't do that. Simply keep in mind that they are real numbers. That's all. Okay. Now, let's look at the first statement. Mod of x plus 1 is less than 2. I've already told you if it's a less than sign, then that means we just need to take minus 2 to plus 2. Okay. But you should ask yourself this question, that this statement says that mod of x plus 1 is less than 2, and I need to find out whether x is greater than y. But the statement that is given to you talks only about x, nothing else. Nothing has been mentioned about y at all. So you should not waste time in solving it. You can, there's no problem, but ideally you should say that, hey, I can get only the range of x, so let me discard it for the moment. Okay, I'll not waste time in it. Let me go move on to the next statement and see if I get my answer or not. Okay, now when you move on to the second statement, you'll see that this statement tells you only about y. Okay, so even if you find something, that will be only about y. So here also, if you want, very quickly you can discard it and say even statement 2 is not sufficient, even b cannot be your answer. Okay, and then when you combine, then at that point of time, you can very quickly take the first statement, write it in the form of, take the second statement. As far as the first statement is concerned, write it in the form of minus 2 to 2. Okay, but we need x, so subtract minus 1. Okay, all sides, and say that the range is minus 3 to 1. Similarly, you can come up with the second statement, which is mod of y plus 8 is less than 6. Here also is a less than sign. So you do the same thing. You take both sides the value, subtract it, okay, and then take the range. Okay, if you take the range, I think there's a mistake here, guys. Just one sec. Uh, Let me correct this very quickly. This would be -6 here, guys. This would be -14, just to be very clear. There's a mistake here. This would be -6 to -8. There's a mistake here. And if you take -6 to -8, you'll get -14 here. Okay. Now, after this, I saw some of you marking the answer as C, and some of you marked the answer as E. What you need to understand is they're asking whether X is greater than Y or not. Okay. Now, once you draw both the diagrams like this, you should be able to notice that there's some overlapping region. Okay. Some values which is possible for Y also and for X also. Now, in this overlapping region, okay, it's quite possible that either X is less than Y, or X is equal to Y, or X is greater than Y. Anything is possible. Okay, so if you marked the answer as C, you are not focusing on this fact that there are some common values because of which all the three cases are possible: less than, greater than, or equal to. Okay, if you take the rest of the range that is there, again, this is -14, really apologies for that. But if you take the rest of the region here, you'll see that only in this portion, which is beyond -3, is X greater than Y. But there's still a possibility that if you look at the common range, you might get any of the answers. And since that is the case, that you can get anything greater than, less than, or equal to, that is why the answer cannot be C. It has to be E. So I hope this is perfectly clear, guys, how to solve the question. I hope by now, after solving this question, you know how to find out the range of a modulus. After finding the range, always draw the diagram. Drawing the diagram will actually help you see very clearly whether it is greater than or less than. Okay. Now, the main takeaway out here is that you don't need to take any values to solve the question. Once you know how to find out the range, all you need to do is draw the diagram, find the range, mark the answer. And as I told you, you can solve this under 45 seconds. Really, really easy question. So I knew some of you would mark the answer as C. Well, those of you did. I believe that you really need to work on your visualization simplification skill. You may know some of your concept. Though I marked no here, you may know some of the concepts, but you're still making a big mistake in simplification visualization. So do work on that. Now, let's come to this question. Again, some learning from the previous question will be used here. And I'm confident that if you've understood question number 4, you should be able to solve this question very easily. Give it a shot and I'll bring up the poll. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. Okay, tell me, did the learning from the previous question help you while solving this question? Could you use whatever you learned in the previous question to solve this question easily? Kindly write in the chat box. What do you think? Was this difficult? The discussion of the previous question was helpful to solve this? Come on, guys, interact a bit. I don't want it to be a one-way session. Okay. So very quickly, well, let's discuss how to solve this question. Well, here you're just given the first information, the most important information that is given is that x and y are integers. Okay. Now, ideally, as I've told you before, write down all the information even if it seems trivial. So they are integers. We know that mod of 3x minus 10 is less than equal to 5. And we need to find out how many pairs of x and y satisfies the given equation, that is x plus 2y is equal to 15. Okay. Now, what you can do is, since you're given mod of 3x minus 10 is less than equal to 5, you can use this information to find out the range of x, because that would be very easy to do, right? You can very easily find out the range of x since a less than sign. And they're integers also, so you can find out what values x will satisfy. That's point number one, very important. The second thing which you can think is that I need to find out how many pairs satisfy x plus 2y, right? So if I find out the range of x, I can put it in this equation by first of all taking x to the other side and writing y in this form. Okay. Now just look at this form, y is equal to 15 minus x by 2. And can anyone tell me what kind of values can I put here? Can x be both even numbers and odd numbers? For example, can I take both the values and place it here? Anyone? Think about it. Y is an integer. So if it's an integer, can I take any value of x and put it here? Or do I need to put specific values like even and odd kind of thing? Do I need to take that into consideration? Anyone? Okay. Yes. So in this case, what you need to do is, since you have 15, which is an odd number, right? And in the denominator you have 2, then that means in the numerator, to cancel it and get an integer, the numerator also needs to be an even number. And if the numerator needs to be an even number, then you should be able to infer that x must be odd. Okay. If only when x is odd can you get an integral value of y. Because say, for example, if I put x equal to 1, okay, so 14 by 2 is 7. But if you take an even number, say x equal to 2, so 15 minus 2 is 13, and that won't work for you. So using this, we can figure out that if I can find out how many values of odd are possible, then that would give me my answer. Okay, so this is the only inference of the pre-analysis that you need to do to find out your answer. Now you know mod of 3 minus x less than equal to 5 can be written like this, right? Minus 5 to 5. Then you add 10, both sides divided by 3, and then you will get a range of x. Okay, once you get a range of x here, you know that you're looking for odd values of x. So if you're looking for odd values of x which are greater than equal to 1.67 and less than 5, and x is an integer, then you can very easily find out the integral values of x. Now these are all the possible values, 2, 3, 4, 5. But since you're looking for odd, the only possible case is x equal to 3, x equal to 5. So these are the only two possible cases. And then obviously in this case you'll get integral values of y, so only two pairs are possible. And keep in mind, you don't need to actually find the pairs. I found it here just for your reference. Ideally, if x is 3, x is 5, you will get some value. They're not asking you what value, they're asking how many pairs. So you can simply say x is 2 values, so y has to be 2 values. So the answer in this case would be option B. Okay, Maiti, what you did was not incorrect. You put values of x and then found it out. That is okay. But ideally, you should not do it. Again, this was a medium hard question, not a very hard question. So it's okay to check for values. But say, if the range was high, so 5 or 10 or 12 values, how many are you going to check? It makes sense to do it in a proper way, find out the range, make some pertinent inferences, and then reduce your calculation. Even this question, if you make the right inference, can be solved in 1.5 minutes with the right kind of approach. If you start putting values and checking, it may take some more time. You may get the answer. Okay. So once again, this was a pretty simple question. You just had to make sure that you apply the constraint that they are integers, and you'll get your answer. Okay, and any of you who marked the answer as D, who basically found out all the range of x, you do not focus on the word integer, you may end up marking the answer as 4 after finding the range of x. So there were 4 values out of which only 2 were possible. Those of you missed that point ended up marking the answer as D. So you know how to simplify, you knew the concept, but you failed out here. You could not do this finding the constraints properly. Okay, so here's the last question for the day, guys. It's based on quadratic equations, and once again, loads of learning in this question also. So very quickly try this out. You have 2.5 minutes, and then I'll discuss the solution. Okay, another 10 seconds, guys, then I'll end the poll. Okay, I'm ending the poll now. Okay, interesting result. 67% of you think that the answer should be D, and 33% of you that think that the answer should be E. Again, this is a question. The reason behind giving this question is I've seen GMAT test this specific thing both in quadratic equations, and sometimes these kind of statements have also been seen in coordinate geometry. Now, this might sound surprising, but I've seen giving them a quadratic equation in the form of a graph and then asking them about the factors. So I thought it's a good, it would be a good exercise to, the good question to solve, and help you understand what exactly do we need to do here to solve such a question. Well, as you can see, I've written the word here simplification again, because if somebody looks at the equation first, 6x squared minus kx plus k is equal to 33 minus 5x, it might seem a bit weird and difficult to decipher what should we do. Okay, but it's important that you look at the powers. Okay, and after looking at the power, you should be able to figure out that, hey, there's an x square, so we are dealing it with a quadratic equation. And since we're dealing with a quadratic equation, let me try and express it in the general form ax squared plus bx plus c. So that's a very important step. Not only for this question, but anywhere you see a x square and some expressions with variables, try to make it in this form. Okay, now how can you do it? Well, the first thing that you need to do is bring all the terms to one side. Bring everything to one side like this. 6x squared minus kx plus k plus 5x minus 33. Now, and after doing this, you should start comparing. Like you need ax squared, so you already have 6x squared. Okay, now you need bx, so you take the x's term minus kx plus 5x. These are the two terms with an x, so you take x common and write it as 5 minus k. Now you need a c. For c, what is left? Whatever is left without any variable like x squared and x is gone, then whatever that is left becomes a part of c. Okay, so from here you can say that the value of A is 6, the value of B is 5 minus K, and the value of C is K minus 33. Okay, now in the question you are asked to find out the product of roots. So product of roots is C by A. And so now once you know what your ABC is, you can say that C by A is K minus 33 by 6. Now how does that help me, this pre-analysis? This very clearly tells me, and it might seem very obvious, but it tells me very clearly that I need to find out the value of K. If I have the value of K, I'll get the answer. That's all. Okay, so it's important, and this is the way how you need to simplify the expression. Now let's look at each statement one by one. The first statement is x minus 3 is one of the factors of the given equation. Now, this is one of these statements which I feel that a lot of students don't understand, and they're not sure how to use the statement to solve it. Okay, I've seen they could not decipher what you're doing here actually. But just to make you understand very quickly, if you take any quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c, you can write it like this, right? X minus p, you can break it down, most of the statements like this, and write it in this form. And you say that p and q are the roots of the equation. We say it like this, right? Now, x minus p times x minus q are also called the factors of the equation also. Okay, they are known as factors. So if you see, for example, if you want to understand the significance of it, we can do that with the help of an example. So let's take x square minus 6x plus 8 as a very simple equation. Okay, now this can be broken down and written like this: x minus 2 times x minus 4. Okay, now obviously the roots are 2 and 4. So here also I can say x minus 2, x minus 4 are factors of this equation. And by factors, what I mean is that if I put x equal to 2 in this expression, x square minus 6x plus, if I put it here in this, I'll get the answer as 0. And you can check it yourself. 4 plus 8 minus 12, it gives you 0. Similarly, if the root is 4, then that means that if you put it in the equation, the expression there, you'll get 0. Okay, so there are two learnings here. One, if you see something is given as a factor, then if you equate that to 0, you'll get the root. Okay, and the root that you get, if you put it back in the expression that you have, the value of that expression becomes 0. Okay, so if you keep these two things in mind, you'll always be able to simplify it very easily. So if x minus 3 is a factor, first thing that I'll say is that x equal to 3 is a root of the given equation. That's number one. Okay, now if it's a root, I can put it in the given expression. So I have this, we simplified it and wrote it like this, right? 6x squared plus 5 minus kx plus k minus 33. We wrote this in the previous slide. If we put x equal to 3 in this, we will get the value as 0. And how does this help me? It helps me because if I put 3, then that means I can solve for x, okay, and find out the value of k. And once I know the value of k, I can find out the product of roots. And this will be 3 here. We can replace this x also with 3. So this should be 3, which is not given, 3 square, and this will become 3. Okay, so I can solve for k, put it here, and get my answer. So that's why statement 1 is sufficient. Now, very quickly, those of you, can you tell me if this is clear or not? Let me put a poll very quickly. Is this part clear? Because it's important. This is something which you not only see in quadratic equations, but other places also sometimes. So if you see a factor, number 1, it's a root. Number 2, you can put it in the equation and find the value of k. Okay, so I can see you're saying yes. So it's perfectly clear. Good. Now, let's very quickly come to the second statement. Okay, the second statement is very easy. If the sum of roots is 13 by 6, okay, then I know my sum of roots is minus b by a. We know this, right? And we've already simplified the equation. After simplification, we knew a was 6, b was 5 minus k. We know that. So we can place this in b by a and then equate this particular thing with 13 by 6. And if we equate it, obviously we will be able to find out the value of k. And once we have the value of k, we can place it in the product of roots equation and find out our answer. So even statement 2 is sufficient, and hence the answer in this case will be option D. So second statement, I'm hoping that all of you were able to do it because that was a simple one, assuming that you were able to simplify this. If you're able to simplify this, 2 was easy. It's mostly with the first statement where some of you may get confused. That's all. And again, this is a hard question. Most of the people are not able to solve this question. Accuracy in such kind of questions are literally 35 to 40%. So if you're able to do it, good. If you're not able to do it now, you will definitely be able to. So the one important takeaway once again is you should learn to simplify your equation, figure out what your ABC is, and then depending on what is given in the question, if it's about factors, sum of roots, product of roots, apply it and get your answer. Okay, once again, I've jotted this down here if anybody wants to see it. Keep in mind that if you're not able, if you marked your answer as say A, then you know some of the things, but you missed solving question B, statement 2. You did not use statement 2 properly. If you're marking A, then there's still some conceptual gap. If you're marking B also, you are not able to solve a few things. You could not visualize that I need to write it in the form of x squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so I hope after these 6 questions you have understood where exactly are you faltering. Is it the concept? Is it the process? Simplification, whether you're not able to infer, and understanding that if you've understood that properly, try and work on that and see if you can improve on it. Okay, and if you need any help from us, please don't hesitate. Those of you are students, you can get in touch with us directly. You know how to do that. Those of you are not our students, you can write to us. And if you want to know more about our course, or if you want to know more about anything that we did in the webinar, please feel free to get in touch with us. Okay. With this, guys, I would end this session, I would request all of you to just tell me, give a brief feedback if you want to, how you like this session. You can put in the chat box. Let me know what you felt, whether you learned something or not, whether it was helpful or not. Any